We continue our conversation now with Senator Brian Townsend, a Democrat from Newcastle County, Delaware. And I know that you led a task force in looking at driving privileges for undocumented workers. What did you come up with, and what are you going to do based on the task force?
Well, what we came up with was this idea has been implemented already in several states around the country, but there are ways to do it well. There are ways to do it in a way that does not encourage fraud. And we feel that the benefits are worth the cost, the administrative cost of implementing the system. What it would do basically, it's not about immigration because we can't handle immigration at the state level. What it's about is for those individuals who have already been here in Delaware for a certain number of years, and 2 years is what we're looking at right now. If you can show 2 years worth of tax returns and you're not a legal U.S. citizen, you can sign up for a driving privilege card. It would be through the DMV. You'd have to provide tax returns. You'd have to do a background checks, take an eye test, a road test, a driving written test, and then you'd basically be issued an unofficial, it's an official state ID, but it's not for official purposes other than that you are driving lawfully on Delaware roadways.
You know, this is a political hot button. That as soon as you go down this road, you're going to be accused of opening the door to amnesty or a path forward for people to become citizens that jumped ahead of the line.
Yes, it's a tough issue, but that's where I think the political leaders need to step up and tackle. I was surprised when the topic came up, the number of colleagues I have or other people that I've spoken with who themselves or through their family have the experience of getting into an accident with someone who seems to be an undocumented Delawarean, who then might leave the scene. There wasn't insurance involved, so that you're not able to collect and be made whole based on the other person's insurance. I mean, this is all about trying to make the community flow smoothly, make things, particularly from an insurance cost perspective, be spread out among everyone who's actually driving on the road. So,
is it that big of a problem?
It seems to be anecdotally in terms of the stories I had heard about this happening, and I also just think overall, like for example, police they stop people frequently who it turns out are driving unlawfully because they don't qualify for any kind of driving card, but they're not arresting them. And I think overall the point would be that as a community, despite all the political rhetoric about immigration, we have long, for many years now, come to accept the benefits that come from having, whether it's migrant workers, whether it's low-income workers, low-wage workers who are undocumented. We've accepted that benefit as a community. And they're members of the Delaware community. They worship here. They work here. Their children go to schools here. But the issue is they are on the roadways driving, no eye test, no road test, no written test, no insurance. And so you kind of hope that if you get into a car accident, the other person has insurance. This is a way of trying to make that system work more smoothly. It's not about immigration because we can't handle that.
Let me go to the other side of the debate, though, because this is about immigration. This part of the debate from the Latino community are suspicious of laws like this because what it does is it lets the federal government, it lets immigration know where they are, and it gets their names into a system. And that system, no matter what safeguards you put forward, can be used by Homeland Security or immigration to find out where they are.
That's a really very important consideration that was part of the task force deliberation. There's something called a Trust Act that other jurisdictions, I think Philadelphia is a real close example, had passed at the city level to say that when we collect this information, we promise, we as a state legislature, the governor who signs it, we promise that to the utmost of our ability, this information is only going to be used for this program.
Unless a crime is committed or unless Homeland Security comes forward with a subpoena and wants to get it part of that information.
Certainly. The point of this data collection would certainly not be to shield anyone who it turns out is guilty of crimes that they need to be held accountable for or suspected for. But it's certainly, at the same time, the system is not designed to be an immediate data collection that would be used to round up undocumented Delawareans and send them back to their home countries. So I think the issue is partly this Trust Act, but it's also partly recognizing the change that's happened at the federal level, at least through the president's executive order that came out right before the task force finished its report, which also stands to impact this issue. So Congress has yet to act, obviously, and hopefully they do act at some point. But I understand that it triggers people's views on immigration. At the same time, it's different from an immigration issue, which we can address at the state level. And to the extent that we have,
and it's a different kind of license. It's not a regular driver's license.
Yeah, so you'll have your photo on there, but it'll clearly say not for official ID. And this is basically all about the ability. Number one, the holding people accountable for the test that we should want all drivers to have completed and passed before they drive, but also qualifying them for insurance. Now, on the task force, police were members of the task force. Latino community was members of the task force. There were other individuals in the task force. Everyone agreed that if you can have photo ID as part of this data collection process, that this has merit to it. The question is whether or not photo ID should be required. And the question is whether or not we can sufficiently protect this data from federal immigration authorities to allay the fears of people in the community.
And that's still to be debated. We're running out of time. That's why I
yes.
definitely wanted to talk to you about crime in Wilmington because it's still a national issue. There was that embarrassment of the Newsweek article calling it Murder Town, USA. Is the state doing enough?
I think that a lot of people are putting a lot of effort into it, and the state just recently passed a resolution establishing a working committee that's going to issue a report on a very expedited basis. I think it's got all levels of government. The state has a role, the county has a role, the city has a role, private sector, public sector, everyone's got a role, and it seems like plenty of people are working on the issue. It just seems for whatever reason.
A lot of people are talking about the issue. It doesn't seem to me. I mean, every time I hear a commission is put together, I think, oh, they're putting it off for another few months. They're not doing something.
Well, I think one of the key questions is whether or not any of the efforts in the past couple of years have really hit on some of the key issues to address from a policing perspective in terms of police strategy, but also from an economic perspective. I mean, everyone's been talking about more the policing part of it. A lot of this has to do with the economy and job opportunities as well as the education system. It's a holistic, comprehensive issue, and the murders, the crime stats are what people have been focusing on. My hope is that we can approach it more holistically in the coming months. It'll take time to turn around, there's no doubt about that. What has been encouraging is in the past couple of weeks, you've seen more people from the community on the ground in Wilmington talk about responsibility that they also have as part of this, whether it's cooperating with police or just having community discussions about how to lift up their communities.
Because if this image stays, nobody's going to move here, businesses will move out, Delaware as a whole will be hurt just by the image problem alone. I know it's much more tragic than that because people are dying, but it builds on itself.
That's why everyone in the state has a stake in this game. And so I think that you have seen the General Assembly vote unanimously for the creation of this kind of committee, which is an expedited thing. I hear you on the, another commission's been created, but this one is very expedited, very targeted, and approaching it from a broader public safety perspective. So we'll see what comes out by the end of March in that regard. And then these other conversations like priority schools in Wilmington, the structure of the Wilmington schools from Red Clay and Christina, and all kinds of other issues I think ultimately impact this. And we'll see over the course of the next 4 months of the General Assembly what other measures, and there are other measures in the pipeline that can address other aspects, not directly the crime, but some of the underlying housing, vacancy, blight, job issues, education issues. It's all coming together. I am hopeful that we'll see a corner be turned here in Wilmington.
Oh, I hope so too. I think everybody hopes for that. We had some other things we wanted to talk about, but we're out of time. So would you please come back?
I'd love to. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Senator Brian Townsend from Newcastle County, Delaware. Stick around. The Delaware Way continues.